welcome to episode 33 of the MMG podcast. I am Chris, and I'm joined yet again by my good friend, Gocubs 711.
So at work, in the copy room, there is a sign on the wall that says, "Attention." The copy repairman came in the other day and installed voice recognition. All you need to do is something in the machine and yell 3 copies. It may take a while for it to recognize anyone's voices, so you may have to say it multiple times. That is the sign that is in the copy room. This is a real story. I don't know if that's just there to fuck with people or not.
Wait,
and I refuse to try it myself.
I thought this was gonna be like I started yelling 3 copies, and because I said it so many times, it printed out like 33 copies or something.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, anyways, I would like you to try it the next time you're there, and then come back to us. No, I'm not doing it. Refuse. All right. Anyways, welcome everybody to episode 33 of the podcast, and the second episode of our NFL season, or week one. Week one's out of the way. We're good. We're in the season. We got it. We did it. And so in today's episode, hopefully it'll be a little bit shorter than last week's, because there's just so much and it ended up being long. But we're gonna do some housekeeping with some of the NFL rules that we forgot to talk about last Wednesday. Last Wednesday. We're gonna be talking about some of the games that happened. We're not gonna recap every single game like we used to, but we'll just kind of dwindle it down to the games that we thought were interesting in various ways. We'll talk about our most surprising team, most disappointing team, and of course we'll do our picks, and Gocubs will have fantasy advice as per usual.
Yes.
So without any further ado, let's get into it. But I guess the first thing I'll do before we even get into anything else, how did you enjoy this week, Gocubs?
Well, I was unfortunately the first 5 or 6 weeks of the year I will be working on Sundays, so I won't get to enjoy everything all at once. However, I did very much enjoy Keeping Up with the Chaos.
Yes.
Which is a reality show I would watch.
Yes. Keeping Up with the Chaos.
Basically Big Brother.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, it was fun to keep track of everything. Buck wild.
Yeah.
But still really enjoyable.
Yeah, Buck wild, as in Buccaneers are wild.
Yes.
And we'll get into that specifically. Yeah, I was saying this to Gocubs earlier, but I really felt like this was one of my favorite week ones that I've seen in a while, because there's just, first of all, there was most of the games were very close near the end of all their end of the games. They were very like 1-score games for the most part. And I don't know, I just felt like there was a little bit heightened drama around everything. There was something really interesting about every single team going in, and it kind of, you felt that energy throughout. So I don't know, something about this year just feels like everything's going to be kind of close. At least, you know, obviously in the beginning everyone's going to be close, but I really think this is going to be a tight season in terms of who might make it into the playoffs. Like, there's a lot of questions up in the air. But overall, I think it was a very successful weekend. For the first time in a while, we had like the early Sunday ratings were up, which I'm sick of talking about TV ratings with the NFL, but that was some reassuring news. So yeah, it was pretty neat. Now, of course, every NFL week doesn't go by without at least some controversy. Nothing too big. But we're going to talk about some of the rules that happened that kind of played into effect of some of the games. And the first I want to talk about is the catch rule, because we completely forgot to talk about the fact that they changed the catch rule again, even though that was such an emphasis from last year. They did change it, and I should have remembered to write down the exact wording of it. If I could look it up really quickly. Gocubs full time.
Yeah, so again, I didn't get to watch many of these games, but I'm sure whatever rules were put in place, they were certainly there. It certainly had some out.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, like,
I can't talk.
It's okay. No, it's fine. It's been a long day, but the yeah, well, like the helmet rule and the kickoff rule, like they certainly were evident, and there was times that they were used. Not like, the helmet rule overall wasn't actually called. It seemed like this weekend. So it shows you how worried everyone was and how it ended up being so deflated, mostly because of the rule change that happened prior to preseason, the third week preseason week. So good, that was good. And like the kickoff rule, I don't think anyone really noticed or cared. But the first with the catch rule, this is the new rule. So the catch is called when you control the ball, you have 2 feet on the ground, and then you perform a football move, which is defined as a third step, reaching or extending for the line to gain, or the ability to perform such an act. Which I feel like is such a weird, like.
It is a really weird phrasing.
Really weird phrasing. I think that I'm just glad that going to the ground is gone, but like, yeah, I'm not a fan of that last one. But everything else seems, pretty clear cut. Everyone was like, all right, so the catch rule solved. Is it? Nah. Well, yes and no, because I felt like there was some things about even the ones that were controversial that were kind of reassuring. I'm going to talk about 2 examples specifically. Both that you've luckily watched, Gocubs, so you'll know what I'm talking about. The first one being the kickoff game, Falcons, Eagles, and Julio Jones made on the shoulder, caught the ball, went to the ground, and it looked like it wasn't too sure if he had complete control of it, and he might have had the ball touch the ground at some point while he was sliding. His back was sliding on the field. And so they reviewed it, and the call on the field was that it was a no catch, and they ended up keeping the call as it was. And I thought that was good, because I thought that there wasn't there was some evidence there that you could call it a catch, but there wasn't enough where it was like, oh, it's so obvious. And I think that they ended up sticking with the ruling on the field. I thought that was good. If they did call it a catch, they probably would have stuck with that ruling as well. And I think that's the precedent that they should try to set with replay, is that they're not going to overturn errors that could be debatable. They're going to overturn the obvious. But then that brings me to Jets at Lions. And the Jets in that game was very interesting on a lot of different levels, but there was one part of it in the early set that I forget who it was. I think it was Quincy Enunwa for the Jets, where he caught the ball with his hand, or almost in his lower arm, and the ball kind of grazed the ground a little bit, and it made it look like he kind of used the ground to get control of the ball. And I swore that it was not a catch because of that. But then it was ruled a catch on the field, and then when they did the replay, they made the rule stand as called. And on Twitter, I went what? That is the absurd call, because I don't know. It seemed very obvious that he used the ground to take control of the ball. I don't know. The whole thing was weird to me. And I think that with the way the rule is right now, where the way it is written and set up right now, is that we're gonna keep on getting catch fiascos happening during the season, unfortunately. But my hope is that they kind of continue the replay standard that they are setting. And I don't know what your opinion about this would be, where they have a ruling that they make on the field, whether it's a non-catch or a catch, and then they do a review, and they keep the call on the field because there's just not enough evidence. I would like to see more obvious calls overturned, but if they end up just being we're going to stick with what we called on the field, I don't think that's a bad precedent to sit on, rather than just being well, let's overturn everything. But I don't know if you want to if you have any specific opinion about that.
No, you covered it.
Yeah, so well. So the catch rule, that's one thing, but then I do think it's gonna be less controversial than in the past, but we'll see when a really close game happens and that plays a part. Then there's the roughing the passer rule that was implemented, and this one was started really gaining steam in the preseason again, kind of like the helmet rule, but not nearly as talked about. And people started noticing the change this week. And essentially, they added a rule in the preseason, or in the off season rather, where a defender that goes after the quarterback as he's sacking the quarterback cannot put their entire body on the quarterback as he's going to the ground. Meaning like you can't like land on top of the quarterback. And this was implemented because of what happened to Aaron Rodgers last year. Anthony Barr used his entire body to land on Aaron Rodgers, ended up breaking Aaron Rodgers' shoulder, and Aaron Rodgers was out for a lot of the year. My opinion, I kind of think it's an absurd rule because I don't know how you expect defenders to, in the split second while they're trying to bring down the quarterback, oh, let me turn my body to the side and the quarterback to the side so I don't get a penalty. To me, it's a weird ruling, and that you don't see guys go down with broken shoulders like Aaron Rodgers all the time when that happens. Like most of the time when a quarterback is sacked, there's not any, there's no like, they don't just break. They don't all of a sudden like get like, they're gonna get bruised probably, but they're not gonna break anything. They're not gonna get hurt like usual. It was a freak accident that happened to Rodgers, and it was a rule that they just felt like they had to implement, and that's a big problem with the NFL generally. And I think that's part of the reason why there's so many people that have problems with the helmet rule too, because that came from the Ryan Shazier thing. And those two things, what happened to Ryan Shazier and Aaron Rodgers, obviously the Shazier thing being like obviously much worse, but you know, you take these two instances that don't happen a lot, and they're like, oh well, we need to legislate it out of the game, and it's like, well, you can't just easily do that. I think that the whole reason behind preseason is that you need to see how these calls happen and see the reaction from the fan bases and from the people that are watching, and the players involved and the coaches involved, and maybe realize maybe this is not a rule that should be implemented, or maybe we should work on this rule a little bit more. And to me, the NFL does so little to actually, they're like, let's just put it in and let's just call it a day. And I just think it's another case of offenses being favored over defenses when it comes to these rules. Well, and I'll give you the floor again, Gocubs, if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Not really. You know these calls and rules better than I do.
Yeah, but that's really like the gist of it, and I think my most frustrating element of this past week, I think, was having those rules be called, and it end up like taking away some really good plays by defenders. But again, I think it'll be just something to monitor. Hopefully, it doesn't impact a game in a huge way down the line, and we'll see how it goes. All right, well, let's move on to one last thing, which is the overtime rules, because I wanted to talk about this after the tie that happened this weekend between the Steelers and the Browns. And let me start out by saying this: I cannot imagine the weirdness that has happened with this Cleveland Browns team, because everyone pretty much was saying this, this offseason, like, oh, the Browns are an improved team. They've gotten better. That this is like one of their best teams in a while. That they're gonna do. They might not win this year, but they're getting there. They're starting to build a team. And they go get off to their best start since 2004, and it's a tie.
Because it's a tie. Because they haven't won week 1 since 2004, and it started in a tie for them. Hugh Jackson now has a record of 1-31-1.
Like, there's something like fitting and yet dark about that whole thing. Like, it's just there's just so much about it that's entertaining.
But it's definitely like, so there are two things that are like just the most insert team here thing to happen this weekend. We'll get to the second one, but this seems just like the most Browns thing to happen.
Like, it just, like, you're at least you didn't lose, but then it's like, fuck.
Like, you're still winless.
Yeah, you're still winless.
You didn't lose, but you're still winless.
Man, but honestly, Yeah.
I think this says more this year about this year's Steelers than it says this year's Browns.
For sure. And I think.
Because
Oh,
the
go ahead.
Steelers tied with the Browns.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think part of it too was the weather. I mean, I think someone said it best, where it's like it's the hard. This was the hardest game to evaluate because of how harsh the weather was. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. I think the Steelers should be concerned because you tied with the fucking Browns. And I think that I just I don't know. I watched the game and this is let's going back to the overtime rules. I watched the game and I was on the edge of my seat because as someone who watched Hard Knocks and as someone who just loves rooting for the underdogs, there's nothing that I want more right now that to happen than the Browns getting a win at some point. I want to see one win this year where those cases of beer get opened in Cleveland and everyone goes fucking nuts. Like I mean I know like Cleveland, like they're not like far off from success because of the you know,
No.
they just had the Cavaliers win. The Indians were in the World Series with within the last few years. So it's not like I feel terribly for the city, but the Browns have been around forever, and Cleveland's like known to being like a football town. Like most people watch football there, and so you kind of just were like, all right, let's just get them a win for once. Like not even a winning season, just get a fucking
Not
win.
even a playoff berth, just a win.
Just a win, just anything.
Let them win a game that isn't against the bad Charger team.
Right. So that's why I'm rooting for this year, and it just stunk because even if they lost to the Steelers, they at least played them close. The fact that it ended in a tie was like both like it was funny, but it was also just heartbreaking. And I thought about my like in the past where I've seen ties, and I'm just like I get so disappointed because they essentially never happened. Like we're gonna talk about our picks records and stuff. That it's not even gonna be accounted for that tie now. It's gone.
Yeah.
The existence of Steelers at Browns for 2018, it's off the record. No one knows about it. It never happened because I hate that because I feel like you guys spent so much time to get to that game, and now it's like there's no result. We all just go home. And so I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna do it because they have these overtime rules for a reason. The way they're set up, where they want to finish as quick as possible. So like the first team to get possession could just score a touchdown and end the game right there. And it's shortened to 10 minutes, so that way the game can end sooner. But I really think that fans and players and coaches, as much as they care about player safety, I think that they also want to have a win under their belt, and they want to be able to play a game to the point where there is a winner. So to kind of just leave it, the way it is, and just kind of be like, no, we're just gonna, you guys go for 10 more minutes, and if there's no winner, then we just go home. I just think it's disappointing and it's frustrating as a fan of the sport. So, just my viewpoint. Do you have like any thoughts on ties generally in the NFL?
I mean, I don't love it when they happen. I like them for one reason. I was gonna say two reasons, but the second reason was just I like it in this situation just so we can meme on the Browns more.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I get that. That's totally fine.
The other reason I like it is just the math that it causes to happen when it comes down to a playoff race.
Well, I explained a little bit.
That just creates a very interesting dynamic to me.
Like meaning like when, like if they, well that is fair because you have like last year.
What's better? And I probably the answer is obvious, but like if a team is 8-8 and another team is 7-8-1, but the team that's 7-8-1 has a win over the team that's 8-8, who goes in?
I think it's the 8-8 team because they have 8 wins.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then.
Yeah, well, but it's true though because you have like, let's say one of the Steelers' losses last year was a tie, and let's say it was against the Bears. I don't know, just putting a random one out there. That ended up being a tie. And they were 13-2-1. They would have had the number 1 seed, and the Patriots would have been number 2. But instead, they were both 13-3 by the end of the year, and the Patriots had the tiebreaker over the Steelers because of the game. So then the Patriots had to be first. So that's how much it affects. And in a sense, then I do agree. I think that it adds a little bit more fun to it. I guess I'm just looking at it more like individually, and I'm like, you play to win the game, like that. Yeah, the teams they practice all week and they get to that point, and you want to be able to walk away with at least a W and not just like, all right, well, we put in enough effort that we didn't lose, and that's what matters. So I don't know, but again, that's just my point of view. I think that the overtime rule is going to be the way they are for now, and it is what it is. But just something that will irk me if that happens more down the line, coming as the season goes on. All right, let's go to. Let's talk about this week, and we're gonna, like I said earlier, we're not gonna recap every single game because it just takes way too long, like we've done in the past. So I narrowed it down to 3 games that we're gonna discuss briefly or just a little bit in detail, and we're gonna talk about some specific teams as well, which we'll get into some matchups.
I also have a note when we're done with that. That is, what's it called?
Relevant.
That built into one of my bold predictions this year.
Oh, okay. So first of all, game of the week, in my view, so we break this down into 3 categories. We're gonna do that every single week. Game of the week, blowout of the week, and team chaos of the week. So we're gonna start with the game of the week, and that was Bears at Packers, and I'll start talking about the first half, and you gotta talk about the second half.
Okay.
If you want to do it that way, because Gocubs was busy that night, and so he was not able to watch the first half, or at least a lot of the first half, and then
none of the first half.
Yeah, so you did come in at the second half though.
Yep.
Okay, so
I got home at like 5 minutes left in the second quarter. Whatever.
Yeah. So
5 seconds.
Yeah. So I was I was watching, and this is a game I was looking forward to. It was my upset pick, and it was it was just something that it was just gonna be like a lot of fun because I just enjoy that rivalry. And right out of the gate, the Bears are playing out of their minds. Khalil Mack specifically, immediate impact. He had a fumble recovery, which he ended up going for a touchdown with. He was sacking sacking Aaron Rodgers so much, and he was just in the faces of the offensive line and just destroying it constantly. And it was not just him; it was Akeem Hicks as well. The secondary was playing pretty well. Raheem Smith had a few plays in the mix there. So, or Raquan, not Raheem.
Yeah.
But so this defense dominated, and then you had the offense for the Bears that looked like it was really starting out on the right foot. Yeah, Jordan Howard was I thought great throughout the game. Even in the second half, excellent game overall. Allen Robinson made quite a few good catches for the team. Tariq Cohen did what he had to do. He just being the dynamic player that he was, made some impact plays. And Trubisky overall, I thought, had a really nice start to this game. And then the second half happened. Well, first of all, near the end of the first half, all of a sudden, I think it was Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks that sacked Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers, all of a sudden, his back gets injured, and or not his back, but his leg gets injured. And I get nervous because I'm like, this is not at all what I want to see happen. Because Aaron Rodgers is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch.
Deserve that.
Say that one more time.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, no, he's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, and I think a lot of people care about being able to watch him on the field, whether you are someone that roots for the Packers or you root against them. It's just more fun to play against, He
gives me anxiety to watch, I'll tell you that, because I root against him.
Well, right, but but I think that it's even more gratifying when you're able to beat him, too.
Yeah.
Like I think, and you just don't want to beat him in that way. And so when he goes down, and then you see him on the sideline, and then you see him go onto the cart and be driven into the locker room, everyone's thinking game over. And not even game over.
Essentially season over.
Season over. Yeah, like it was like that the Packers are going to be gone another year where they have to go with a backup quarterback that's not reliable, and it was just a mess. And the Bears, they go into the half. I believe they only had like 3 points, or I actually they were shut out. I think in the first half, right? I'm trying to remember.
Packers.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they
Yeah,
were
I
shut
think
out.
I'm pretty sure it was 17-0.
Yeah, so it was. Yeah, let me. I could just pull it up real quick here. Hold on. Yes, yeah. So 17-0, like you said. And I was just thinking in my mind, I was just like, God, this could have been a really really great game. But now it's gonna be lost, and then we're gonna have to rely on Deshaun Kaiser to come in. And all of a sudden, the start of the second half. Go Cubs, you could take it from here.
Suddenly, Aaron Rodgers is back in the game with a hurt knee.
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers is known for moving his body
Yeah.
before throwing the ball. Aaron Rodgers is still able to throw the ball without moving his body.
Mm-hmm.
He led a very, very upsetting to watch comeback, which at one point, I'm pretty sure tied up. Bears got ahead again by 2 field goals. And then that clearly wasn't enough because it's Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
There were multiple occasions where the Bears could have sealed it up. I need to send you this picture, actually. I'm going to send it through text. A Kyle Fuller almost interception.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple drives towards the goal. And this picture that I'm going to send to you, I don't remember. I think it says it in the tweet, but third down from the Packers 3-yard line. This was the scene. This play went for -5 yards.
That's are you sure that was real? Because I don't. That's a little extreme.
I don't know. It's from a verified account, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Quick note on that image. I am pausing the podcast to tell you this as I am editing this video, or this podcast at least. I just read a quick article on this photo, and yeah, this is actually a photo that someone took. And I do think that there is reason to criticize Trubisky that he did not throw the pass. But he didn't have all day to throw the pass. It was a lot closer than this image appears. It could have been picked off, but it was a read that the Bears could have done and could have used to throw. Even if it ended up being picked off, I think it would have been a risk well taken at that point, at least, because I don't know. It just looks like a throw that was very possibly going to be in Burden's hands. I think Burden was expecting to get the ball anyway. So that's my opinion on it. I wish I could get Gocubs in here, but I think it was pretty obvious that he was very disappointed in the way Trubisky, at least that last Bears play, worked out. Anyways, back to the show.
Here's the thing. You can tell that this is Trubisky's second year.
Yeah.
And obviously there's still some nerves that he needs to work through. With how good he looked in the second half, he couldn't finish. He got too nervous with the greatest quarterback of all time, leading this comeback. It was not pretty. Bears unfortunately could not get the job done. I would be upset if it was if it was against any team or any person other than Aaron Rodgers, who led the comeback. The Bears are going to be really good this season. And at the very least, the Bears are not going to get last place this season in the NFC North.
Yeah, well, right, and well, here's the thing, and I think that I don't know, I one of the most insane things to me was the play that ended up them taking the lead. And it was Rodgers kind of rolling to his left as the defensive line tried to catch up to him. He throws the ball, kind of flicks it like he usually does to Randall Cobb, and then Cobb what it reminded me of was the Larry Fitzgerald run to the goal line in that 2015 divisional round against the Packers.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
that was in overtime. That to me, that's what it reminded me so much of, because it felt like at any moment the Bears were going to tackle him, and it just never happened. And instead of like what happened with Fitzgerald, where he was tackled right before the end zone, Relikov just waltzed right in, and even though
I
Mac was like right
yeah.
behind him to try to tackle him, because Mac again, despite having like a more quiet second half, like he was still, his effort was there, like he was trying really hard, and the guy, big guy too, running all the way down the field to catch Cobb, it was like respectable as all hell, but just didn't happen. And it was incredible. It's what makes Aaron Rodgers so good, is that he's just able in any situation whatsoever to get himself out of a hole. It's just
I've
incredible.
I've seen the Packers play so much because I watched them play the Bears, where there's a specific threshold of time where if he's not sacked, I know that it's going to be a 40-yard plus throw.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no question. Like, as I don't know what the exact measured time is, but I can just feel it in my soul that once that threshold passes, he is going to throw it down the field, and the receiver is going to catch it. And it,
Yeah.
without fail, that feeling trips.
Yeah. And and I think that I I just think about when we look back on Rogers' career, and Rich Eisen, which you know, and I've always praised very much, and I think he said it best, on his talk show, where he said, when you look back at his career, at Rogers' career, we're gonna think about some of the great games that he's been a part of, and the one of the first games we're gonna think about is what happened on Sunday night,
Mm.
because despite the injury, despite the hole that they were in, despite everything, every bit of like manufactured, adversity, essentially, manufactured in some cases, adversity that they ended up getting themselves into, he was able to pull them right out. And despite the MCL injury, which there is questions of whether or not he might start this week against the Vikings, um, despite all that, he came out and he
Which
did what he did, what we always
which
expected him.
another thing. I don't know if I necessarily, and this isn't just me being a salty fan, but if you're unsure if you're going to start this guy the next week, you maybe should not have played him the rest of the game.
Right.
That's just my opinion, especially when he's so important to your team. And we saw what happened last year when he wasn't on your team and how bad your fucking team is without him.
That's the thing too, and I think like there's like I don't think the Packers defense played well this game, even in the
No.
second half, where I think a lot of people stepped up their game in the second half, despite even like Aaron Rodgers obviously was a big part of it, but there was other Packers players that played very well in the second half. The defense I'm not really gonna give a ton of credit to, because I do think that they still had trouble at times stopping Mitchell Trubisky, and then you have like Clay Matthews, who made it like a really dumbass play in the fourth quarter that almost cost them the game. Um, you know, I just I think about um, that team right now, and I guess they just really wanted to get the win because it was that they felt like, or maybe Aaron Rodgers maybe convinced them that he was just like, what, I'm good. I know I could be good. My leg's fine. Put me in there. And maybe they just didn't have enough time to really like evaluate his injury, and they just trusted him, I guess. But I mean, look, what's going to
They
be an
really
issue?
did not want to lose that game. I'll
Right.
tell you that.
And I think I think we can agree that if he does not come back into the game, that they're not winning that game.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go into next week, and you're saying that you're worried about what he can do, we saw what he can do, but the Vikings are right now a more established defense,
Yes.
and one that is very scary to play against. And if you're worried about Rodgers' mobility, because that was in question multiple times during that game, even in the second half where he was just doing amazing things, his mobility was still limited. And if you're worried that it could get even worse against the Vikings, I can understand them sitting him. But I do think you bring up a valid point. If you're still worried about his leg against anybody, even if it's a really bad defense, it just takes one player to go up to him, bend him a certain way, and like fuck him up, And so I don't know. I think it's just that there was a will in there, that it was just we had a limited time to do everything to really see what his status is, and he seems fine enough where we could put him out there now. Maybe they're like, okay, well, now that he survived that game, maybe we can be more hesitant about the second game. I don't know. It's weird to me. The whole thing is weird, but
Yep.
regardless, it was one of the best. It was the best game of the weekend, and it might be one of the best games of the season when it's all said and done. And I just commend Aaron Rodgers and that team. And for the Bears, it's like, it is really hard not to draw the parallels between this team and what happened with the Chiefs with Matt Nagy in that Titans game. It is very difficult to not look at how they went out to this really big offensive lead and then let the Titans just come back and win that game. But I think that's stuff that can be fixed. Hopefully when they get into that situation and they take the lead, that the defense is good enough where they should be able to stop the other team. But the offense needs to produce a little bit more, I think, especially in the passing game right now, in order to keep those games alive. And in order to keep the lead alive, rather. And so that's my biggest concern with the Bears right now. They need to learn how to hold the lead. Specifically on offense, because I think a lot of what happened on Sunday was the Bears defense just being tired, and not that they were bad.
Packers know how to call plays.
Right, and
just keep going.
Right,
just don't stop playing.
Right, and in the Bears offense, that there was that they were not on the field long enough for the defense to kind of recover. So that's. I think that those are adjustments that just need to be made, and I mean, Nagy really was a play caller only for a few weeks last season. He did an outstanding job when he took over, and that's why he got picked for the Bears. And so I think that these are going to be the early adjustments that need to be made. I think next week's game, this week that we're going to be talking about with the Seahawks, this is a grand opportunity to take a team that used to be successful and actually like take it to them with the offensive firepower that they have, and a defense that, again, with Mac as the leader, that should dominate in a game. So I don't think the Bears should be disappointed at all by this performance. It's just shitty that Aaron Rodgers is so good. Ultimately. So
right, let's move on.
The blowout of the week was the Buffalo Bills just getting their ass handed to them by the Ravens. Very rarely do you see 47-3 games in the NFL. Mostly that's like a college type score. But I think the Buffalo Bills are just a college football team at this point.
You're not totally wrong.
It was a rough game to watch. Nathan Peterman leading the charge was just not good. Ended with a 0 passer rating, which is not easy to do. It's like to be that bad. To start with the Ravens, though, I've been high on this team. I've been riding this team into the beginning of the season. Their weapons showed up. All 3 wide receivers that they added scored touchdowns in the game. The defense was a huge part of why the Bills sucked so much, even though the offense of the Bills generally was bad. And all around, it was a great. Joe Flacco had just a great game, and you don't really hear that a lot about Joe Flacco, but he did. He had a really solid game, which goes right with what people have been saying since the training camp, that he's been doing well. So I'm very confident in saying that if this team goes against the Steelers right now, I think they win, and I do think they have a really good shot at winning this division. I feel, and they have a chance this Thursday to take that sole possession lead of the division. So I'm very high on them. The Bills, though, opposite story right now, because this team is coming off of the playoffs, a spot that they stole from the Ravens last year, and they fucking regretted it. and they've had to face the Jaguars to get their ass kind of handed to them, and then they face the Ravens, and it just they you know they still they have families at home. You don't have to beat them up that much, Ravens. All right, but I. But like I said, Nathan Peterman was awful, and I think that they need to consider Josh Allen as the next guy up. Even though the offensive line's terrible, just get him out there, get him some reps. I know you don't want him to get hurt, but like, just
something better than Peterman.
Something better than Peterman.
Come on.
Because, well, this is the thing too with Peterman. Like, you're gonna throw him against the Chargers, who he threw 5 interceptions against. He's going up against that team.
Yeah.
Why would you do that to him again? Like, it's like the guy's gonna have like PTSD by the time it's all said and done. I feel bad for Peterman. I hate seeing what's happening to him, but it's just like he's a bad quarterback, and he's gonna continue to get shat on if they continue to start him. But the offensive line was a mess. The defense was just letting things. Even the secondary that I thought was the highlight of this team gave up so many yards. It was really a bad game for the Bills, and I just hear now the Bills being the number 1 overall pick going into next year, which, yeah. You know what, Nick Bosa I think is like the top prospect right now. Joey
Bosa.
Yeah, I believe he's a brother. And he's a pass rusher. You need a pass rusher. The Bills desperately need a pass rusher. So
they need a lot of things.
But hey, that would be a good start. So maybe it won't be a bad thing to be the number 1 overall pick, Bills. Let's look at the bright side, right? So, anyways, blowout of the week, and I think the Bills season's already over. Let's move on. Team Chaos did reign supreme a few times this weekend, but we had to pick one. And I don't think anything best represents the Chaos than a last place Buccaneers team without their starting quarterback absolutely annihilating the New Orleans Saints, at least on their defensive side.
Yes.
The New Orleans Saints, who won the division, and everyone said that they're a well-balanced team and everything's going to work out. Their defense was bad against the Buccaneers this weekend, and it was all thanks to
Fitzpatrick.
It was all thanks to Mr. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
It's magic, as the kids say.
Yeah, as the kids say.
And by that, I mean 30-year-olds.
the demographic of football fans. Yes. I look at the just 14.9 average yard average. He threw for 417 yards. He threw 4 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. A perfect passer rating, or close to it, of 156.2, which was the best in the league on Sunday rather. Just an incredible performance. A 75% pass percentage, like just an amazing start to the year. And already I think about what people were kind of hinting at, what the head coach was hinting at times, where they're like, well, maybe Jameis Winston might not get the starting job once he comes back from suspension. If Ryan Fitzpatrick plays like this every single week, I think there's really good evidence to maybe keep on playing him.
Especially if they end up I don't know if they'll win the next one, but who do they play week 3?
Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
But the Steelers have a tendency to lose to not great teams.
Yeah, if they beat the Steelers, Jameis Winston will not start for the team.
I mean,
because Dirk Hutter's even said that, there's no guarantee we're going to start Winston.
Right, and
I hope they keep Fitzmagic, because Winston is a bad quarterback. I said it.
Yeah, I mean,
sucks.
I feel like Winston, he's had his moments, but there is some concerns about his character off the field, and his just turns over the ball way too much. So I do think, and there's just so much about this team that's that feels like they're just trying to inch away from Winston slowly, and I feel like this is the ice that will break from beneath Winston if Fitzpatrick continues to play well. And it's not just I know Fitzpatrick had an amazing game. I'm not gonna take that away from him, but you look at the weapons around him too. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Adam Humphries, Deshaun Jackson, all of them played such a big part of this game. You know, the defensive line and I think was disappointing because they still gave up 40 fucking points to the Saints. But you know, if they can improve anything on defense and they continue to have the play call. By the way, I should also point this out. It wasn't Dirk Cutter that was calling the plays like usual. He actually changed his play caller, and I'm gonna forget his fucking name, but it's the Buccaneers offensive coordinator that decided to call the plays, and it was the most dynamic I've ever seen the Buccaneers. And Todd Monken, there you go, that's his name. Todd Monken was the play caller for the Buccaneers, and he did such a fantastic job. And he wept through a Saints defense that we really thought was going to be good this year. And it may still be, but it's very early on looks like it had some trouble against this team. And I don't know. This is why I've had this weird feeling about the Bucs, because I never thought that they would beat the Saints, but I did feel like they would have like some say in this team. That's why I bold predicted that they wouldn't be last place. And I just right now looking at it, I really love that offense, and if that defense, that front seven can step up, this could be a team that could make a surprise splash into the playoffs. It could. I'm not saying it's gonna happen for sure, but it could. And the Saints, look, and again with all these, it's just 1 week, but there is concern about the defense, and I'm hoping that for their sake that they end up, you know, that pass rush comes into play, and that young secondary, they have now face some adversity going into next week. That all sides need to improve. Luckily you have the Browns next. We probably should be able to take care of them, but again, we'll see. This is their time to adjust. Luckily, back-to-back games at home from week 1 to week 2, so all good. Anything to say about the Saints or Buccaneers, Gocubs?
Two things about the Saints game, Saints Buccaneers game. This was the 48-40. Is a score that has never happened in the NFL before.
Really?
It is the 1040th unique final score in NFL history.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Also, I've been keeping track. This is recap of the week.
Yeah.
I've been keeping track, or I just now checked the records versus home and away teams. Building into my bold prediction that away teams will outwin home teams this year.
Yes.
And right now, it is away team 7, home teams 8, and 1 tie.
8, 7, and 1. Yeah, I mean, you might as well just get rid of the tie at that point.
I don't know. I'm gonna keep the tie.
Yeah, but
could factor in. Who knows?
I mean, maybe it might, but there you go. So pretty even across the board. That's usually how it ends up getting to, but I right. I think it's a good start, and I think we'll see how next week plays out. I think a lot of away teams this week should have a good advantage. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's talk. Before we get into our picks, most surprising teams and most disappointing teams. And let's start with Go Cubs. What was your most surprising team?
My most surprising team was the Jets. As you know, I locked the Lions versus Jets in the Lions' favor.
Right.
And they just sucked so badly. The Lions and the Jets actually seemed like a professional team
for once,
which I wasn't expecting this year.
Right.
Nobody would.
Yeah.
Jets got 4. Was it 4 or 5? I think just 4.
5 interceptions. 5 interceptions.
5 interceptions on Matthew Stafford. Last year, Jaguars did that with Big Ben.
Yeah.
But 5 interceptions on a guy who's known to be a pretty damn good quarterback.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing I should talk about the Jets. The Jets were really good. I was really happy to see where they I don't know if I was happy to see that, but it was that they were able to bounced back from their first their quarterback's first pass being a pick six
Mm-hmm.
and winning that game so decidedly.
Mm-hmm.
So they're my most surprisingly good team.
Yeah, and just to bounce off of that too, like I thought that Bilal Powell had a really good game. The running back. I thought the receivers played surprisingly well, even without Curse in the mix. But yeah, that defense. Williams was in their face. The line just generally was in their face. The secondary played very well, and that was with and without Tremaine Johnson at times because he was dealing with injury. And so this all around a really great performance. But I will say this about the Lions: the Jets came out afterwards in the locker room and said to reporters that they were able to call every single play that the Lions were about to run. And that's not something that happens all the time. Like they're basically saying that it was very obvious what the Lions were going to do before every single snap. And that's not good. That's not a good thing for the Lions. And there's already reports about Matt Patricia and the play and some of the veteran players not happy about the way he's running the team, and then they're just having just friction all around. And Lions off to a surprisingly rough start to this season. And the Jets, Sam Darnold, it could finally be it. Could finally be the guy at long last to take the reins. So I agree with you. Very surprising. But the team I chose, it was tough. I mean, obviously the Bucks were one of the teams that I would consider, but let's throw the Chiefs out there, I will raise my hand and say I am sorry to the Kansas City Chiefs and their fan base and all that, because I really thought the Chiefs were going to have a down year this year. But Patrick Mahomes is a brilliant specimen because
Yes.
he played out of his mind, such a great
Holy
game.
shit.
And just the throws that he would make were insane. And the Chargers ultimately, they did have the most yards out of everyone in the league. Like they played very well on offense and destroyed the Chiefs' defense for a lot. But there was also some great players on defense too. Like Anthony Hickens had 15 tackles, the most in the league. Like he played very well. And the Chiefs' offense, I think we really forgot about the great players on that team. Yeah, Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins in the mix now. You have a great offensive line too, and you have one of the great play callers, regular season of course, in Andy Reid. Andy Reid, he's such a good coach, especially early on in the season when he comes off of buys or comes into the season. We saw what happened last year against the Patriots in Week 1, and so I guess I should have expected that they would have much more of a decisive say against the Chargers. I'm not gonna go too hard against the Chargers because I think they just made some weird miscues overall, and they were without Joey Bosa. But the Chiefs were impressive, and from here on out, I will consider the Chiefs still a AFC West favorite. I think that we should not write them off because
I totally agree now.
Yeah, I think that they should be in the mix for AFC West favors. Even though I think they're gonna have tough competition, until I see otherwise, they'll be the favorites in my view.
Mm-hmm.
So turning from positive to negative, who is the most disappointing team in your eyes, Gocubs?
Let's see.
Would you like me to go first?
I guess in terms of what I was expecting from them.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like, oh, it was a close game, but just like what I was expecting from this team this year.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because the game itself, it was 18-12. That's a one-score game. That's close, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Ryan was not an actor. There were some really just off plays in that game that made me really confused about, especially when like, oh, there's 20 people on the other side of the field or on the other side of the line of scrimmage on the ball into the end zone. That'll work, guys. Totally worked in the playoffs. Okay. Yeah, it was weird play calling, and Matt Ryan didn't seem like who I expect Matt Ryan to be.
Mm,
Julio Jones was the most surprising part on that because he actually like was who you expect Julio Jones to be for the
mm-hmm.
most part. Uh, but they just have such red zone issues, and I'm not sure why that is. And because of that, and because I thought they were going to be a really good team this year, I
Just
they just
right. I and I think about everyone's basically trying to call for Steve Sarkis in his head with the offensive coordinator. Um, Everyone wants him to, go, like, be fired immediately, and I get it. There were some weird plays where he pulled Julio Jones out of the game, and it's like, like, why are you doing that? He's the best playmaker on your team. Why are you pulling him off the field? Um, but
Calvin really hasn't done anything yet. Mohamed Sanu is reliable, but not the play compared
right,
to Julio Jones.
right, and so I get why people want to go after him. I think that we see a lot of these seasons where after like only 2 games you see an offensive coordinator get fired. He might be that guy, but
Right.
I look at the way that Matt Ryan played and how the first of all the running game was so uninspired to me. I'm not incredibly worried about Freeman and Coleman, but it was just not a great game for them. I think a lot of it was the Eagles' defensive line, how well they played, but I was just overall it was not great. But you would think that even if those guys were eliminated, that Matt Ryan would be able to kind of carry the passing game. And I don't know. I'm not gonna say there's something up with Matt Ryan, but it was just a bizarre game from him. There was throws that he would make that he would just completely miss. Like he would throw it way over the receiver. That you just didn't see from him in the past. The guy is a good quarterback, and I'm not gonna take that away from him. But so far, this game really kind of worries me. If like if this is the quarterback that we're gonna see, I don't know. I just thought that this whole offseason we've been talking about this offense and how it's coming together. And you have all these playmakers, and it seemed like near the end of last year that it all was coming together. And to have it start like this is just not even close to ideal. So I'm with you on that disappointment. Um, my team that I chose, and I was thinking Falcons as well, but I'll do something a little bit different here. I'm going to say the Tennessee Titans for the sole.
Oh yeah, that's another one.
For the sole purpose, for first of all, a lot of injuries. Delaney Walker's out for the year, who is very important for them.
Yep.
Yeah, Mariota and Lawan, I feel like I have not heard any updates on their injuries. So we might be going into next week with Blaine Gabbert starting. And
Ooh.
they let the Dolphins basically handle them mostly on defense, but the running game for the Dolphins was excellent. I'm not going to take that away from the Dolphins, but this Titans defense was supposed to improve, and especially the secondary was supposed to improve with Butler being there, and he got kind of torched. Kenny Stills was a huge part of that. And you had a few other guys in the mix there. Albert Wilson was playing well, so like I just I'm very disappointed with this Titans team, and it makes me worried about the head coaching hire they made with Mike Vrabel, and because he kind of was handed the head coaching job after this really disappointing year with the Texans in his only year with the Texans. It was the whole thing is just weird to me with this Titans team, and again, it goes to show you that I can just no longer rely on wanting this Titans team to succeed. And I think that's going to be something to watch going into next week. They have the Texans next.
Yeah. If I've heard a couple people say this, and I kind of agree with it. If the Titans don't make the playoffs this year, if they don't show that they can be successful, the Titans are going to be in the market for new QB.
They might,
because Mariota hasn't done what he was drafted to do.
Yeah, I that's a shame because I do like Mariota because he does make some great plays, but when it doesn't work with one team, then he's gonna have to go to another. He might be one of those guys that he might find his success on another team, but right now it just hasn't worked out for the Titans, and just a disappointing start. Hopefully they could turn it around, but Weird start to see it, but of course, again, that game is a little bit of an anomaly because it was a 7-hour game, got delayed so many times. Um, so I'm not gonna go after them too bad, but this is next week's gonna be a really interesting test for them going up against their division rival. So, all right, that's the game rewind for you guys. If we didn't talk about your team and your game, I'm sorry. We'll talk about them in the picks. Uh, so quick rundown of the pick standings as they are right now. Right now I'm sitting in the lead with a 9-6 record, 3 points under my belt. With Gocubs 7-8, unfortunately,
Yep.
and -1
Yep.
qualifier in the mix because of the guarantee. So you're at -2 at the moment, but it is week 1. It's very early. You'll rebound.
Yeah.
Also, I'm keeping track of the team picks this year because you know how we do at the end of every year where we're like, let's see how which teams we predicted right the most and all that.
And then we
I
spent all that fucking time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna alleviate ourselves of a lot of work, and I'm keeping track of it right now. So
Awesome.
so the teams that we are currently undefeated up with are the Ravens, Bills, Panthers, Bengals, Cowboys, Broncos, Colts, Jaguars, Rams, Vikings, Giants, Raiders, Niners, and Seahawks. That we correctly predicted. I also correctly predicted the Cardinals, Texans, Patriots, and Redskins. And then we were wrong on everyone else.
Yes.
So, and that will at least alleviate some pressure, and we'll come back to those at the when we enter these picks every week, to kind of be to kind of keep track of that all season, if possible.
Yeah.
So let's break down our picks for week number 2, and we will start with our Thursday night football game, the battle for the top of the AFC North. I know, yes, it is week 2, but it is already where we could consider this an important battle.
Yeah, I would.
Just to kind of take the full control of the division, at least right out of the gate here. And it's the battle between the Ravens and the Bengals, with both of the teams coming off of wins against their respective teams. I think both played pretty impressive games. The Bengals had to come back in their game against the Colts, but overall played well on both sides of the ball down the stretch. And offense looks better as well. We talked about the Ravens already, so I won't dive into that. What do you think is going to happen in this game?
Yeah, so I know that the Ravens played the Bills and blew them out, but I still think that they have a little bit more in place than the Bengals do this year.
Mm-hmm.
The Bengals have, at least in preseason, didn't seem like they had fixed many of their problems. I do think that if they do fix those, they have the talent and the capability to actually make a standing. But as it stands right now, I think the Ravens are going to take this one.
I agree. I'm with you on the Ravens. I think right now this is the all around team that can go up against the Steelers and battle them for this division. Steelers have had the division the past 2 seasons. I think the Ravens could do well, and if they win this game, it'll be a big victory because they will already have quite
that tiebreaker.
Yeah, they'll have for now they'll have the tiebreaker, and the Steelers, they'll be up essentially 2 wins on them. So that's a big start. So that's it. That's the Ravens for you. Let's move on to the Steelers as well. The Steelers are taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. A very interesting battle this week. By the way, James Conner started with the Steelers this past week. Played very well. Le'Veon Bell still out, which I was not expecting. Earl Thomas reported out of nowhere, but Le'Veon Bell didn't. And so he probably is going to be out this week, I would think. And if he's going to continue his holdout. So James Conner is going to be the running back. Offense looked well, but the defense was not as well, not that great, especially down the line. And the offense gave up some really important turnovers to the Browns, ended in a tie. And then, of course, the Chiefs, who, again, we've talked about already. What do you think is going to happen in this game?
So every fucking time that I pick the Chiefs to beat the Steelers mop the floor with them. Doesn't matter who's on the team what the team is, but I think this change in what the Chiefs can do and how the Steelers performed last week, this is the time. Let's go, Chiefs.
Yeah, you know what? And again, I was very high on the Chiefs, and I think that they have a lot of capabilities right now. I'm still not completely confident in their defense, and I think that's why I'm going to give this to the Steelers. Mainly because I think that out of everything that happened last weekend against the Browns, they were still able to keep the Browns from completing any like last minute play that would get them the win. I think a lot of their issues were on offense, and they should not have too much of a trouble against the Chiefs defense. So I'm going to go with the Steelers. I'll defer on that one, but I think it's going to be a great game overall.
Yeah.
Next up, the Texans at the Titans. Now, of course, we talked about the Titans, really disappointing, but the Texans were also kind of disappointing this past week. Yes, they lost to the Patriots, which is not the worst thing that could ever happen to you. But I do think that Deshaun Watson did not have a great start to the year, and the defense played pretty well though. Tyrann Mathieu specifically had a pretty good day. So what do you think's gonna happen in this game, Gocubs?
Yeah, one more game of synergy for this team that's been marred by injuries the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And against a team that, yeah, with bad weather, but really did not show up. And the Texans kind of did show up. Based on that, I've got Houston.
Yeah, I got Houston too. I'm really concerned about the Titans right now. I can't pick them, and I have confidence enough still in Deshaun Watson that I think it was a bad game. It was against the Patriots. And you'll come back against the Titans and have a good game, I think. Let's go Texans. I'm with you on that. Next up, Colts at the Redskins. Game that would have at one point had the number 1, number 2 overall picks at quarterback with Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III. We know what happened with RG3. He's now with the Ravens. But now Alex Smith is in charge in Washington. And they had a pretty good start to the year against the Cardinals, just completely annihilated them with the offense playing as bad as it was for the Cardinals. Adrian Peterson had himself a day, and the defense stepped up when it mattered as well. And it's going up against a tougher, I think, opponent offensively at least with Andrew Luck and the Colts, who was surprised. Really, really nice start to the season despite blowing the lead. Pretty nice, I think was a very interesting start for the Colts this year. What do you think is going to happen with this game?
I am of the belief that Alex Smith is a better quarterback than people want to admit.
Mm-hmm.
And with how they showed up against the Cardinals, with Alex Smith just being an efficient quarterback, Adrian Peterson, I guess, just not having lost anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did last year, but still able to play at least 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Washington on this one because if they continue to play like this, and they don't have the strongest defense I know, but if they continue to play like this, they might be able to make a run at the division one.
Yeah. I mean, there's something about people are like I don't know what it is with the NFC East this year, but with the Redskins, everyone's unusually low on them, and the Giants, everyone's unusually high on them.
Same with the Cowboys. I feel like people are unusually high on the Cowboys this year.
Yeah,
including I think it was NFL Network. I forget who the analyst was, but he predicted that the Cowboys were going to get into the playoffs and not the Panthers.
That was Michael Irvin, and he is a Cowboy, and he's best friends with Jerry Jones. Never trust a single thing that guy says.
Yeah.
It's just putting it out there.
Are not a good team.
NFL Network, I love some of the analysts on there. I don't love Michael Irvin. Just he's a great he's a all-time great wide receiver. Not really a great person in my view.
But the boys are back in town.
But the boys are back. So anyway, sorry, I don't mean to shit on Michael Irvin, but God, I do not like his analysis. I don't know. I really like the Redskins. I think they have a quarterback, they have a running back, and they have a pretty decent offensive line. The receivers are not great, and not a great situation on that front, but Jordan Reed played well last week, and I do think the defense has been very underrated. Front seven's looking pretty good. And of course, Josh Norman's still a cornerback. I'm not only picking the Redskins; they're my guarantee. I think they can beat. I think they can beat the Colts. Again, nothing against Andrew Luck. He played really well last week in his return to the NFL. Great for him. I still think he's gonna lose. I still think he's gonna lose this week. So I guarantee it. So there you go. Next up,
All right.
Dolphins at Jets. We got a division rivalry here. I did not expect either of these teams to be 1-0, and yet they're both are going into this game. And obviously, we already talked about the Jets and how impressive they looked. The Dolphins, again, I put a lot of the blame on the Titans, but the Dolphins, despite the rain delay, despite some of the weather shit that happened to them, really nice running game, pretty good start on defense. So I think this is gonna be one of the really good games of the weekend. What do you think's gonna happen in this one?
Yeah, that statement's fucked up. Yeah, I agree. Dolphins came out more than I thought they would.
Yeah.
And the Jets definitely did. But I think in this case, I'm gonna go with the Jets.
The Jets
over the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm not like. I think that we're gonna look at the Jets and be wowed by their performance, and I'm not gonna take anything away from them. I do think the Lions were a much easier opponent because of the fact they gave up so many calls and were like really obvious with what they were gonna do. With that being said, though, I'm with you. I'm going with the Jets because I really think that the way that this team is built right now, I think all around they're looking a lot better than the Dolphins. And plus, the Jets are at home. They usually play well against the Dolphins when at MetLife Stadium. So I'm going with the Jets. Next up, Eagles at Buccaneers. Buccaneers coming off their shootout. Their insane win against the Saints. Eagles, a little rusty to start the kickoff. They're going to probably roll with Nick Foles again this week. And some injuries still on offense, but their defense looked really well in the kickoff game as they start their title defense. Go Cubs. What do you think?
Yeah, the Eagles are too good to let a shootout happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with the Eagles on this one just because their defense I think is stronger than the Saints. Their offense looked pretty good against Atlanta, and even though it's in Tampa Bay, I think Doug Peterson is going to get them back on track so that they end up winning there. So I'm going to go with the Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles are the Super Bowl team that we all are expecting to get back on track. But what if they don't? What if let's just say time after time after time the Eagles I pick against and they win. So I would do Eagles fans a favor. Maybe I'm just a lucky charm for them. I'm gonna pick against the Eagles again. I'm gonna make the Buccaneers the team chaos, and let's see. Maybe the Eagles will win at that point, and we'll keep the tradition going. This is the shtick I'm gonna go with. Look, in all seriousness, I do think the Eagles are probably gonna be the winner here, but I wanted to pick someone that I felt like this team has the ability to get even better from what happened last week, especially on defense. They need to improve a ton, but they don't have the worst they're not going up against a really tough offense with the way that Nick Foles looked last week and that wide receiver core looked. It was not that great with the Eagles last week. I think they're going to have a tough time against the Eagles defense. That's going to be a battle. But guess who's on the Buccaneers defense this year? Vinny Curry and Bo Allen, two defensive linemen from last year's Super Bowl team. They know the Eagles defensive line better than anyone, and they'll know how to beat them. I'm going with the Buccaneers. Team Chaos. So, there you go.
Okay.
Anyways, let's move on from that to the Browns. Going to New Orleans to face the Saints. Browns last weekend, they showed some elements of what made this offseason so interesting that maybe, just maybe, they could finally get one win. Unfortunately, it was a tie instead. They now have to go to New Orleans, a team with the Saints that they are coming back from a tough loss against their division opponent. They need to improve on defense. But the offense looked pretty well last week. What do you think is going to happen in this one, Gocubs?
I think that the Browns and the Steelers are going to start with the same record. 0-1-1. The Saints are still a good team, and even though that defense was not great, I think that or not great against the Buccaneers, they could get their shit together, and they still have one of the best offenses in the league with Breeze, Thomas, Kamara, other receivers that they have. Just they have more of the ability to do it than the Browns do. So I'm gonna go with the Saints.
Yeah, I gotta go with the Saints as well. And again, it's not like, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, well, this is what it is now. I like the the Browns are just gonna go back to their losing ways. Like, no, it's just a really tough start to the year. And I think that the Saints they're gonna adjust. They'll get back on track. They have the talent to do so. And I don't think the Browns' offense looked that amazing, even if you factor in the weather. I'm gonna go with the Saints as well. We'll see how that goes for them. Intriguing NFC South matchup. The Carolina Panthers will be headed to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. And what an interesting game, because you now have the Falcons, who we talked about earlier, were very disappointing to start out. The Panthers also a little disappointed with the way that the offense came out, but they still played relatively well on that side of the ball, even though it was not like a lights out or anything. Defense was astonishing, but the Panthers are also dealing with some adversity. Greg Olsen injured, broken, I think a broken foot,
fractured foot. Yeah,
fractured
same foot he injured last season.
Yeah, so that he's gonna be out some time. Darrell Williams, their right tackle, he tried to play hero in this game, and he got injured. I think he's gonna be out for the year as well. So some injury problems. But the Falcons, they have their own issues as well. What do you think is gonna happen in this one, Gocubs?
So yeah, as you kind of said, Panthers coming off a win but have a couple injuries. Offense wasn't that great. Falcons coming off of a loss. Their team is mostly intact except for one defender.
Oh, that's true. Keanu Neal's injured, Deion James.
Yeah,
a lot of injuries on the
but
Falcons.
That's kind of an important defender.
Yeah.
So looking at it that way, I think I'm gonna go with the Panthers with this one, because like you said, the defense was lights out, phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that trend is going to continue for the Panthers this season. And I don't know, maybe without that safety for the Falcons, I think that their Panthers offense is going to have a little bit easier time.
Yeah, I gotta go with the Panthers. I forgot to mention that those are some big injuries. Both Keanu Neal's out for the year with the ACL. Deion Jones, rather, he might come back later in the year. But those are two really key defenders, and the Falcons' defense played great on the kickoff. I don't want to take anything away from them, but the injuries are going to hurt them going forward. And if the offense can't pick up steam, I don't know what will. I gotta go with the Panthers as well on this one.
Yeah.
So let's
2-0 Panthers.
Yeah.
If this goes this way, the Panthers will be in the lead in the NFC South.
I believe so. Yeah. Let's go with the Chargers at the Bills. Again, will Nathan Peterman start? We are sitting on the edge of our seats just in anticipation for this one. The Chargers Chargers are coming off of a loss, some miscues on special teams, and they did let Patrick Mahomes have a little bit of a field day with the defense. But maybe they get Joey Bosa back. We are not too sure about that right now. But overall, this team's pretty talented. Can they take down the Bills, or will the Bills play upset?
Last year, I predicted every game against the Browns. This year, I'm predicting every game against the Bills.
Yeah, it's
Chargers, no question.
Yeah,
I'm gonna lock this one up.
I have a problem with this. No, I'm kidding. Whatever. Okay. It's fine.
I have another one I can lock up.
What's the other one that you have in mind?
The NFC West matchup.
Oh wait, shit. Oh yeah.
I'll do the other one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the Chargers. against the Bills, it's gonna be ugly. I'm gonna go with the Chargers in this one as well. It's a really hard for me to see this Bills team winning any games anytime soon. So go with them. I think that this is the marquee matchup of the week: Vikings at the Packers, or at least one of the marquee matchups of the week. Will Aaron Rodgers be healthy? And will Kirk Cousins continue his pretty nice start to the year? The Vikings defense is going to be all at it, but will the Packers defense kind of shake off? They had a pretty interesting game against the Bears, and again, I was not happy with them. But Mike Pettine, who's the defensive coordinator now, this is a really good opportunity for them to take charge here. With his new defense. So what do you think is going to happen in this one, Gocubs?
I'm going to go with the Vikings in this one because as good as Aaron Rodgers is, he's the possibility of not playing, and if he doesn't play, Vikings no question. But overall, the Vikings defense is just so good, and and their offense is better than, I'd say the Vikings defense and Packers offense is about the same, where Vikings offense is much better than the Packers defense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would go with
Vikings in this one.
I would go with Vikings as well. I usually get the vibes with this rivalry, that it usually is that the Vikings end up going into Lambeau. I don't know. These teams tend to split, but the last few years it just seems like the Vikings have started to get the edge on the Packers. Well, especially last year because of the quarterback situation. Yeah. I really like the Vikings. I think they're an all around really good team. They have a really tough task in shutting down Aaron Rodgers, but I think they'll figure out a way to do it. So I'm going with the Vikings. All right. Next up. The Niners are going to be hosting the Lions. Lions have a lot of questions going into this week.
They will not be answered. Jimmy Handsome is going to lead the 49ers to a victory.
Jimmy Handsome?
Have you not heard people call him Jimmy Handsome?
No, I have not actually. No, yeah. I know. I always hear Jimmy G, but that's because it's last name.
Well, because he's an attractive man.
He's a yes, of course, very. He's a very rugged, or not rugged, but like very chiseled look to him. Yeah. I gotta go Niners because I'm less. I'm like less worried about the Niners than I am of the Lions at this point. I think the Niners, they were in that game for the most part with the Vikings until the end. I would probably chalk them up as a win in this one. So Niners. Okay. Cardinals at Rams. All right, I have a feeling what you're going to do with this one, but I'll go ahead and sum it up anyway. The divisional rivalry, Cardinals, the worst team in the division right now, it seems like, going up against a really good Rams team that, despite the slow start in the Raiders game, ended up just demolishing the team down the stretch, 23 unanswered points, and they looked like the team that we thought would be dominant going into this year. What do you think is going to happen in this one, Gocubs?
This is going to be my lock.
Yeah.
That I just alluded to. Yeah, Rams are going to take this one. They're going to ram their head. There's no better word for what a ram does than ram into the bird and then just take it out of the sky. I'm tired.
Yeah, Rams. Not really much question out of me. Next up, the Raiders at the Broncos. Oh boy, John Gruden, what a start to your year! Gave like 15 really great plays, and then like just completely just everything went out the window. Was just not a great game for the Raiders overall. And going up against the Broncos team coming off of a win. I would like better quarterback play overall from Case Keenum, but I think the rookies really stood out in that game against the Seahawks. and their defense was swarming. Von Miller had an epic game, arguably a better game than even Khalil Mack had. Um, I mean, I'm kind of already showing how I feel about this matchup, but you go ahead.
Yeah. No, I feel I feel the same way. The Broncos looked impressive against the Seahawks. Maybe not as impressive with how bad we know the Seahawks are this year, but still pretty solid. Their defense seems to have returned to their dominant form, and their offense is definitely better than it was last year.
Yeah.
Case Keenum is an improvement at quarterback by a long shot.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna go with the Broncos in this AFC West matchup.
Yeah, and again, like I think I agree with you. I think it's better than what they've had in recent times. I just hope he doesn't turn over the ball. That was a big problem with that game against the Seahawks. But this is not the Seahawks. Luckily, the Seahawks has a young, some nice playmakers in the group there. I'm not very high on this Raiders defense at all. And would have been if Khalil Mack was there. Yeah. Yes, John Gruden. I'm going with the Broncos. Anyways, I mean, I know I said marquee for the Vikings and Packers, but I guess this is going to be the game of week 2. Patriots at the Jaguars. Patriots have to go into Jacksonville to take on who they be in the AFC Championship. The Patriots are, they had, despite the score seeming close, it was not really that close of a game against the Texans. Pretty solid performance overall offensively. Defense, they kind of started giving up a few more points. And there were some miscues, I think, with the Patriots offense that I was concerned about. But, it's the Patriots. They usually figure it out. The Jaguars, in the meantime, nice win against the Giants. Again, offensively, not the best outing. But defensively, they were constantly in the mix. Yannick Ngakoue, I gotta say, and Miles Jack, both of them are just incredible young defenders.
100%.
And I very, very interesting to see how this Jaguars team does this year. But really tough test. What the hell was that?
My mouse kind of just did its own thing.
Okay.
Knocked into my mic. It's all good.
Okay. So what do you think's gonna happen? Patriots at Jaguars.
One day I will stop calling Team Chaoses against the Patriots, but that day is not today. Duval till we die. Let's go Jacksonville. If any team can do it, it's going to be them. They almost won the AFC Championship and should have won because Miles Jack wasn't down. Yeah. The Jaguars have the potential.
Yeah.
It's just going to take like a couple things to stop the Patriots. And if the offense steps up, then they will, I think they'll have a chance. So I'm going to go with the Jaguars.
Fascinating matchup between the Patriots offense and Jaguars defense and what they do. It's so tempting. It really is. It really is tempting for me to pick the Jaguars in this one. In fact, going into this week, I was going into last week, I think I was pretty confident that I was going to end up dropping my rule and picking against the Patriots in this matchup. But I thought the win against the Giants was pretty good, but I started to see some concerns with the receiving core with this team because I think that they're missing Lee a little bit. Maybe it's just early season struggles that they'll rebound from that. But it just kind of concerned me against the Giants team that I just don't think is very good this year. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm gonna go with the Patriots. I hope they prove me wrong. It would be amazing to see the Jacksonville, and plus they have the home field advantage. This is a prime position for the Jaguars to win, but I can't. It's too difficult right now to pick against the Patriots. So I'm gonna go with them. Next up, the Sunday Night Football game between the Giants and Cowboys. I hate this. I just don't care for this rivalry. I know it gets big ratings, and that's why they've always put it in prime time, but these teams suck. Anyways, Cowboys they're coming off a bad loss against the Panthers. Their offense did not get going. Their front seven was impressive, though. I'll give them that. The Giants had a decent defensive game. But I think there's so many people overreacting with the offensive performance. The ones that overreacting in a positive way, specifically Saquon Barkley. And I want Saquon Barkley to succeed as a Giants fan. I want him to succeed. But everyone was just like, oh, 106 yards rushing. Oh my God, what a great game. But 68 of those yards came on one fucking rush. So, like, he had, like, 17 rushes and, like, 48 yards. That was not a good game. He had one good rush. Let's stop with that. Stop with this offense succeeding. It was a bad game overall. Picking the Giants, though. Because I like the playmakers a lot more on the Giants right now than the Cowboys. That's my only argument I can make. What about you, Gocubs?
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I really like the Giants in this matchup, and well, one, it might just be because I hate the Cowboys more. I think that they are a poopy team. The Giants do have some things to them. They have great offensive weapons, and if they utilize them, they're going to beat the Cowboys.
I'm just still so concerned about Eli Manning, but whatever. I'm just, there's something about this game that I just think the Giants I was most impressed with the Giants last week than I was with the Cowboys. The Cowboys just did not look great. So I'm happy to go with the G-Men in this matchup. Last but not least, the Seahawks at the Bears for Monday Night Football. This is a matchup between two teams that looked like they were going to win their respective games and unfortunately did not. One for a dramatic comebackness with Aaron Rodgers and the other with, Aaron with Case Keenum being your kryptonite. But the Seahawks are looking for some inspiring play, and the Bears are just looking to forget the name Aaron Rodgers for now. What do you got, Gocubs?
I'm picking with my heart. And I know the Seahawks did better, a little better than I expected against the Broncos. But the Bears almost won that game. There were 2 or 3 points where like if one thing went different, they would have won.
Mm-hmm.
And against a really poor Seahawks offense minus Russell Wilson, and a defense that is not the Legion of Boom that it was, I'm gonna go with the Bears in this situation.
I gotta go Bears as well. I just with the Seahawks, the one thing that stood out to me with them was that the lack of pass rush was deafening, considering what they traded away Michael Bennett. Cliff Averill is gone with a career-ending injury, and the pass rush was just non-existent for this team. Pass coverage worked out well. Earl Thomas coming back was a very important part of why the game stayed close. And I think the Russell Wilson's lack of playmakers is also a big problem. I still like what I see from this Bears team, and I think they'll, especially that they're at home. I think that they're a better team in this matchup, so I'm going Bears as well.
Okay.
So 3 games we defer on.
Mine is dumb.
Say again.
Mine are dumb.
Yours is not dumb. I mean, well, I'll say this: you the one that you'll probably get is the one that you picked the Eagles, and I picked the Buccaneers. But
yeah, that's true.
But no, I mean, look, I think the Steelers Chiefs is gonna be a close game, and I think the Patriots Jaguars is gonna be a close game. We'll see on both of those fronts how that ends up working out. So this is right now. I think the overall summary of week 1, it was crazy and it was great. I think it's very hard to make judgments still before we really see these teams pick up. I think by like week 4 or 5, we'll have a good idea of what these teams are. And even then, who fucking knows? But
yeah, like last year I noticed the pattern in like week 4 or 5 where the Jaguars were winning every odd game.
Yeah.
Like decisively winning every odd game and then shitting the bed every even one.
Yeah. And then they won a bunch straight.
Almost make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they won a bunch straight, and it was they had a good time. So we'll see how it goes. I'm very excited though for this week because I think there is a lot of good matchups, a lot of interesting things happening there. some games that people are going to be flying under the radar with, in terms of what could be a good game or not. But we'll see how it goes. Any final word? Oh, the fantasy segment as well. Go
Yes.
fantasy with Go Cubs. Let's do this.
Okay.
We'll get an intro song at some point.
My fantasy team did not do well this week. I won't get into much of that. The one thing that I do want to mention fantasy wise is there's been a big debate about who is going to be used more, or who would be the better fantasy option between Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis. The Titans definitely had a favorite in that Miami game. I don't know if that will remain the same, but I sure hope it does. Dion Lewis in half PPR scored 19.5 points, where Derrick Henry only scored about 3. They use Dion Lewis both in rushing and in passing. So if you are able to target him as opposed to Henry, I would go for that in terms of trades. You're not going to be able to pick him off waivers because drafts already happened. Another note is for your defense this week, I would suggest probably either the Saints defense, Chargers defense, or Rams defense would be the top 3 that I would go for that have really good matchups this week. And then in terms of targets, Ryan Fitzmagic, if you don't have a good quarterback and want someone who, like, at least for a couple weeks can do something for you. And then Phillip Lindsay, the Denver running back who showed up a lot more than people expected. I'm targeting him in my dynasty league, so I think you should too. Would be a good waiver wire fit in at some point, especially if you don't have the best running backs like I do.
Before this week, I had no idea of his existence, and then he showed up and played well. So that's what happens when you have a good game. People are gonna notice you. So good for Phillip Lindsay. So there's your fantasy. Go fantasy with Go Cubs segment, and that will do it for us on this podcast. Another interesting, fun podcast. Love doing these. We'll be back next week with another episode. We'll run through all the games and preview week 3, of course, and any other weird stray storylines. I think as we get into the year, we'll have less outside the lines talk, and we'll have more game recap stuff going on. So we'll figure that out as we go. So, anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Go Cubs, thank you very much for joining.
Of course.
And we'll see you guys next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.